Hey guys, welcome back to Mike's Nerd Cave. We're back here for the first time in the Nerd Cave itself on one of these with a guest and the new podcast setup. I know I did one other one here before quite a while back, but this is my first time trying this setup out and I'm pretty excited to see how it turns out. So you guys are going to have to let me know in the comments. Today we're on episode number 8 and we've got my buddy here, Craig. This is going to be an interesting one. It's going to be another visit to the Android versus iOS idea, and especially good timing for him right now because he just tried switching to an iPhone, and we're going to find out how that went. But Craig, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, so I'm Craig, a good friend of Mike's. We met while at RIT while playing volleyball together. Went to RIT for software engineering, so a bit of a nerd myself. I'm currently in the industry, working at Kodak, of all places. And yeah, my socials are Felton Craig. Post some video games, some nerdy stuff, and some
Drinks and
yeah.
food. A
Drinks
lot of
and
that
food,
stuff.
yeah.
Travels a lot. Check him out.
Yeah.
Today, actually, we got, speaking of drinks, one that him and I had for the first time together in a trip down to New York City. We were at the bar, the Nomad, and it's a chartreuse fernet hot chocolate with an Angostura bitters whipped cream on top. It's a really awesome cocktail. For both of us, it would be in like our top 5. And I know he's made it a lot more than me, but we decided to make it tonight for the show. We got a little snow here in upstate New York in late April, so we figured, why not hot chocolate?
Why not?
But all right, let's hop right away into the first topic, and that's, I just kind of want to know like your phone journey thus far, because I know I was roommates with Craig back at RIT, and he had a smartphone before I ever did, probably 2 or 3 before I ever had my first smartphone. I was late to the game. And what was your journey even before that and coming into smartphones, like with phones like high school, college, all of that?
Yeah, so, I mean, even before I personally owned a phone, I grew up, my parents had the Nokia flip phones, the ones that never broke, had, a 3-day battery life, fantastic things. And, I think those were like early 2000s. And then, you kind of progressed, and then I have friends that end up getting like the Razor phones, those are like the cool thing.
I remember like everyone having that for a bit, like that phone, and then the LG chocolate. I don't know if
I don't remember that. No.
That was another one that came out like just after the Razor. It was one of the slide up phones.
Oh, yeah.
And it looked kind of like an iPod.
Huh.
Yeah.
I feel like those slide up phones were a lot of fun. Like they were satisfying just to like slide up. You see, they just snap in place.
They were the fidget spinner of the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I had experienced all these phones. And then I think around 2006, I got my first phone, which was a BlackBerry Pearl. So, great, fantastic first phone. You get everything that BlackBerry offered, but in a more condensed package. So I think I was maybe a freshman year of high school. And so, it was just everything I could want in a phone.
Did they have 3G at the time?
Probably.
Yeah. So like you had probably you had closer to a smartphone as a freshman in high school than I did as like a junior in college. It's kind of weird to think about.
Yeah, and I mean even those phones, like you had more games than the Nokia. The Nokia you might have Snake and Breakout, and the BlackBerry Pearl had those games, but you also had a little bit more to it. You had a camera and internet access. So yeah, it was a good first phone.
Yeah, that's solid. And then from there, like, so I mean that's pretty much a smartphone starting out right away. But what was your first like Apple like smartphone? Because the iPhone really was like the first real touch screen. Like it was the one to make the new statement. The phones we have today essentially started with that first iPhone.
Yeah.
What was your first phone of that like caliber, that category? I'm assuming it was in college.
Yeah, and I think it was just an underwhelming phone. It was maybe a Motorola, one of those phones. I I think it was very underwhelming. The first smartphone that I do remember being very happy with was the Nexus series.
The 4, I remember.
The 4, yeah. Yeah, and you got the Nexus, and it was Google's kind of baby, and they were advocating it for being like the kind of model phone, and I think it was a model series. I had the 4, the 5, and the 6P.
Yeah, you've been on Google phones, I guess, ever since then, right? Because you went from the 6P to a Pixel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, you right up the line. You were clean Google OS. You didn't waver at all.
Yep.
I guess until recently, where I'll let you tell more about this, but it was a few weeks back. I was talking to Craig, and he goes, I think I'm going to buy an iPhone. And I know I've been debating that now for a while. I don't need a new phone yet, but when I do, I've been debating switching over to an iPhone. And we have a few other friends who've made the same switch and really enjoy it. So I was curious to see how it went for Craig, and I'll let you take it away with that, but I don't want to spoil it. We'll let you tell what happened here.
Yeah, so I'll give you some background on why I even considered an iPhone. I've like we've just mentioned, I've been on the Pixel and Nexus line, and Google's treating me well. The entire ecosystem, everything it offers. But a few years back, I shouldn't say a few years, it's been a while now, I had bought a MacBook Air as my first Mac product. I had iPods, that kind of stuff beforehand. But I had experienced all these Windows laptops, and I bought the MacBook Air, and it was just such a superior experience I had prior to any other laptop before then. And since then, I've had a couple other MacBook Pros, whatnot. I've even had another Windows laptop that I bought personally, and I've used for work, both of them, both Mac and on the Windows laptop side of things. And I can still confidently say that the MacBook, in my opinion, is just a superior product. The touchpad, the hardware, the software, it's kind of a whole package deal. And so I started thinking, hey, is the iPhone the same way compared to Android phone? Is the software and the hardware just, is the whole package superior? And so I thought I might as well try it out.
I think a lot of people would say it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're very right in thinking that, and I'm sure you probably, even with your experience with it, you probably knew you were right. But I mean, it was a tougher transition for you than you expected, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you always hear that Apple's user experience is, kind of their baby. It's the thing that they focus on, and they want to do the best. And I kind of found the opposite. I felt like Android had a better user experience in many, many ways.
That's a hot take.
It is a very hot take.
Yeah.
And I think hardware-wise, it's still a superior phone. And I guess I'll kind of go over some of the positive and negatives I had with it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
So the first thing that I experienced was the keyboard. So immediately when I started using it, I was texting people, sending out emails, whatnot, and I noticed that the default keyboard on the iOS does not have a period, whereas Android, at least on the Pixel series, does. And for me, that just seems like an obvious user experience.
Wait, it doesn't have a period?
It does not have a period on the default keyboard for Apple.
I forgot you pull down. There's something you can hold and pull down to get the period. I forgot about that. And I don't know why that didn't even cross my mind, because I had a work iPhone for like 5 years.
I remember, yeah.
And day one, I installed the Google keyboard on it and never looked back. Mm-hmm. So I just never even realized.
Yeah, and so I asked my friends who were long-time iPhone users, what do you do? And most of them just double tap the space bar. It's something you do on Android. But things like commas, that kind of stuff, they said, we just type in shorter sentences. I'm like, how is that, a nice experience, whereas on the Android keyboard, you have the period. It's one of the most used characters that you're gonna be typing with. It has it on the main keyboard, and It also has a drag and slide feature, so you hold down on the period and you can move up to comma, exclamation point.
Yeah, pretty much all of the commonly used punctuation, whether it be even parentheses, I think forward slash, a couple of the others that are just commonly used for little things here and there. You can get to without swiping off to the side to a different section of the keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I swipe to text, and then I can swipe to do all the punctuation. And so that was the kind of first major thing I discovered, was like, well, that's annoying. And so I immediately, as Mike did, installed the Google default keyboard. And I think that was kind of the first thing that I noticed, that hey, I enjoyed Google's version a little bit better. And before I even started texting, that kind of stuff, I installed some of the Google ecosystems. So I have everything currently backed up to Google Photos. I've heard bad things about Apple Maps, so I didn't even bother using that. I just installed Google Maps, and I had a couple of these other things like Google Drive and my notes that I already have on their ecosystem. I just kept there. So I kind of noticed that, hey, Google's kind of taken over my iPhone before I even started using it.
So
Sorry, I don't have any information in it, but I found something.
I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I just activated his Google device.
you keep it down over there. No, I want to.
Here's the definition of keep down. Hidden by crouching
Hey, Google.
or lying down.
Stop. That was a nice little cameo. But I want to go back to the maps you were talking about. And I know I was reading an article just the other day, actually, that popped up. And I think I know why it came up to me. It's because I've had issues with my Google Maps. So it's probably just because I've searched stuff about it. But it was the comparison today of Apple Maps and Google Maps. And they're actually very comparable now. Apple Maps, a lot of the issues it seems that it did have been fixed. I mean, that it's been a 7-year process of them doing that since they brought Apple Maps back. But the issue I've been having, I don't know if you've had this at all. I've had it for like 4 months now. Google Maps, I have to go in and clear the cache in Google Maps at least once a week. Or if I go to look for directions now on my Pixel 3, it won't show the blue line for directions. It won't give me upcoming turns. It'll just tell me like right when I get there when to turn. It doesn't show me the location of the destination on the map. I can't see anything on the map. All it does is vocally tell me what to do during the directions until I clear cache, and then it'll show me everything. And I've had to do that like once a week for the last 4 months to keep Google Maps working.
Jeez.
I don't know if it's something where I just have to go in and clear like my phone cache. I've rebooted the phone, done all of that. Like it should be cleared. And I just have to, pretty much every time I use Google Maps, I have to clear the cache to get it to work properly. And it's really been frustrating me. It seems like it could be, even at this point, a RAM issue on the Pixel 3. Because I think the Pixel 3 only has 3 or 4 gigabytes of RAM. I can't remember. I don't know if that's why, but yeah, it's been really frustrating me. But
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, that's just something recently that's frustrated me.
Yeah, and I can't speak to that personally, but I'll kind of change it slightly about just Apple Maps and Google Maps. So like Google Maps has typically been kind of the gold standard for mapping software, and the big alternative has been Open Maps or Open. Is that Open? Yeah, I think it's called Open Maps. And all these big tech companies, think about like Facebook, Apple, Uber. They all use this, and some of them had tried to make their own mapping software as a service, that kind of stuff.
Or they used Waze for a while, I think a lot of them. But Google bought Waze. Waze just uses Google Maps.
Yeah.
So
all these companies, at some point had tried making their own mapping, and they found out it's extremely difficult to do, especially keeping it accurate. And so a lot of these companies actually invest a ton of money or employees to keep Open Maps up to date and up to sync. And so it's kind of weird because these companies that would normally be competitors in some way are actually working together to work against Google Maps, to basically have a product as good as Google Maps.
yeah, that and It seems like, I mean, Apple is probably, I would say, the closest one, but to doing their own thing. But it's been such an uphill battle. Like I just said, it's been 7 years that it took them. Apple, the biggest, are they still the most profitable company, or they're up there, one of the most profitable companies in the world? It took them 7 years to be able to match what Google has built, or come close to matching.
And I think
what
they're
Google has
even
built.
based off that open maps.
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy to think about that. It really is a losing battle for any company to try doing their own mapping at this point, to even try to compete. But what are some of the, I guess, other core apps, core things, one that you use daily, but two, something else? Like, was there any specific app, any specific use case that you thought upgrading or changing over to the iPhone was going to help you with?
I didn't really go into it thinking it was going to improve a whole lot. I think at a whole they're pretty similar devices. They offer a lot of similar things. It just one might do the other. I just assumed that iOS might be doing it slightly better. For example, on the MacBooks, their touchpads are generally like a superior product, and they just do it better than a lot of Windows laptops that I personally have used.
I've heard that as well. I kind of really want one of the new M1 or whatever the next chip down the line after the M1, one of those MacBooks. I think the new MacBook Air is such an amazing machine. I would love to be editing on there in the future. But with you saying that, how did it feel to be a blue bubble?
Oh,
I've been dying to ask. How did it feel?
It felt amazing. I texted my iOS friends or iMessage friends, and like, hey, check this shit out. And
did they notice right away? Like, without you saying?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They knew you were a blue. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast the other day on the way home. I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about how, especially in the entertainment industry, even like YouTube, other things, getting an agent is tough if you don't have an iPhone. Because unless you're like so big that the agent just wants you, if you're like medium, you're trying to grow and you're trying to get an agent, if you show up as a green bubble, they won't talk to you. Which it was one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. Like, this person was like, yeah, I had 3 different agents stop talking to me because I was a green bubble.
And you could kind of see this, you had work phones and they were iPhones, and our friends that had work phones or have work phones are iPhones, and we have a good mutual friend who's a lawyer, and and there's some stigma, like if you don't have an iPhone, you're not in this group.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what right words to say, I guess, without pissing people off or whatever, but it's almost an elitist status.
In some ways it is, like in order to afford an iPhone, you're shelling out, $800+. And so it kind of puts you in that category.
Just funny because you don't have to anymore. You can get an iPhone SE, has the iPhone 11 specs, very good specs, one of the most powerful processors when it comes to a phone on the market, and it's $400. You're just stuck with a phone design from 5 years ago, but brand new specs.
Yeah.
Even the iPhone Mini, I think, is only like $600 or $700 now. I want to say 600, and that is the newest specs.
Yeah.
I'd have to look that up for sure, but I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I was looking at it. I know it's been the easiest one to find on sale because it hasn't sold well. I don't know why. I love small phones, but I want to see. I know I had. I feel like I had some other like interesting stuff. I think.
I could continue going down, some of these other negatives I've had, or even going down this iMessage thing. We could talk about like why Google hasn't released an Android app for iMessage, and I think it would be detrimental to them.
Well, and I think, they haven't released an app for iMessage?
Yeah, for Android.
I think there's another way to look at it, in that Google on Android have updated to the RCS messaging, which is via cell carrier.
Yep.
So all messaging is multimedia messaging, essentially. So therefore, that used to be Apple's reason for Android being a green bubble, was because iMessage was technically over the internet for iPhone to iPhone. It was over where a green bubble just represented that you were going via SMS. That was their old excuse. Well, now, RCS messaging, everything's done with data. Technically, there's nothing that you can't send between the devices. It's just a background programming thing now. On Apple's side, too. What Android is using for their messaging is an open standard. So now it's iOS that's walled off. Do you think... So, back to what you were saying, could Google do that? Make an iMessage for Google? Oh, I took it as something that was compatible with iMessage. You're saying make their own group.
Make their own
Pixel,
app.
Like Pixel Message.
Yeah. Like Apple releases iMessenger app for Android. And I think there's absolutely zero reason for them to do it. Because like we had mentioned, there is kind of a stigma around being a green bubble.
Yeah.
And so if you could be on an Android and have a blue bubble, then what's the point of buying an iPhone for some people?
True.
It eliminates one of those reasons.
I've heard so many people say the reason that they would never be able to switch off of iPhone is because they wouldn't be a blue bubble anymore. They would ruin... They say the amount of people I've heard, and girls, I'm sorry singling you out because I've heard this way more on the side of girls, refusing to include certain people in group messages, their friends in group messages, because they will ruin the group message if they're not part of iMessage. And it's, in a way, Apple supporting bullying because it's breeding this bullying standard. I don't want to call that, like, that's getting a little out there. But that's how I've always kind of viewed that, is it's like it becomes this clique thing that, like, it goes back to the whole elitist status of being a blue bubble. I don't want to get into that anymore. Beat that horse enough. But what I wanted to ask you about, because you wanted to find this next level experience. That's the reason you tried the phone.
Yep.
Is there one thing, or multiple even, that would make a phone your dream phone? Like something, whether it be in the immediate future or something you could see 5 years down the line that you think would, one, maybe revolutionize phones, or even just make it exactly what you want to see in a phone?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take that question kind of as two different questions. I'll take one as like incremental improvements that we could have on a phone, and then maybe kind of the evolution of where I see the phone in the future. And so, my dream smartphone would, at the moment, would be Android with iMessenger app, but that's not going to happen. But honestly, I'd love to see phones to be more ingrained in my kind of ecosystem, I'll call that. So one example of ingrained in my ecosystem today would be tapping my phone to pay for purchases at the grocery store. I have my credit card linked to my phone.
You don't do that?
Or no, I'm saying that's something that...
Oh, that's an example of now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But maybe expanding off that further would be like tapping to log into my computer, for example. Or even like a website, maybe I'm browsing on my computer and I use my phone as my password manager. It authenticates me as a person. And maybe, like I could use the face authentication on my phone or the finger on the back, and that will authenticate on my computer. So
these are some of the things, and you might already know this, that work on the iOS side.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you can, if you have Apple Watch, iPhone, they all work with your Mac. You can use the Smart Pay. You can use the unlock features just approaching if you have a MacBook or something, with your watch. If you have that synced up, it'll unlock when you approach, when you reach that gate, if you will.
So yeah, I
so
guess
all of that kind of stuff, maybe you just missed it.
Yeah.
You didn't get the chance. You didn't make it that far into your iPhone journey because the other things stopped you. But those are all things that are part of that Apple ecosystem, that like walled garden, if you will.
Yeah.
That's why people love it so much, is because everything within there works so fluently together.
Yeah, and so I guess my dream phone would have that, and again, just more aspects of my life. Another one might be, with my laptop, tapping my phone against it and extending the screen, to the laptop, or even like when I get in the car, kind of being an extension to my car, with the phone. And so it's just, I think, these are kind of some small, like incremental things I'd love to see in the phones. I think another thing would be just more like, when you're using the keyboard, it has like the suggested words on the top. I really love the suggestions thing. But I love to see that more at like kind of like app level, besides just being on a texting level.
That reminds me, actually, you bringing that one up. And if anyone else deals with this, let me know in the comments, or noticed even when this changed. You might have. But at one point, Android's messaging system, or Google Messenger, the keyboard, I guess it would be specifically Gboard, stopped. It used to be, if you spell the word, it was like an incorrect thing. Maybe it's a name or a phrase or something you use specifically, but it's not necessarily in the dictionary. So it would autocorrect back to a different word. It used to be you just had to hit backspace and it would fix it to the word you wanted it to be. Now, if you hit the backspace, it deletes the word and you have to retype it again, and then it'll let you keep it. Have you noticed that? Because that came from iPhone. That's one of the things that it's always been on iOS. And I used to say, I love that Android doesn't do this. And then it adopted it.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible adoption.
Yeah.
Again, talking about user experience, I don't agree with that user experience. That's one of the things I noticed on the iPhone as well.
That and I know this is probably just a nitpick because it's one of those things you get used to when you use it. I did kind of get used to it. For Android, you've always been able to tap the cursor where you want it in your sentence. You just tap. It's pretty accurate usually. I rarely miss when I do that. iPhone, you can only go beginning or end of words unless you hold it down and drag. Really not that big a deal. If you use it every day, you get used to it, and I'm sure you're just as fast. But for me, someone my main phone has always been Android, whenever I have used iOS devices, that's always kind of bothered me a little bit. And it's a very small nitpick. And with all of these things we've talked about here, I think personally I'm still ready to give iPhone a try whenever that time comes, whenever I need a new phone. I have a Pixel 3. I love it. There are a few little things that are starting to show its age, but nothing so bad that I don't think it can last at least another year for me. And so we've talked about Craig trying the iPhone, all of that. What phone did you go back to, and how has your experience been on that?
Yeah, so I went back to the Pixel 4a. And again, it's everything I want at the moment in a phone. There were things that my iPhone 11 Pro Max did better. For example, the camera was amazing on that phone.
How was it? So photos, I feel like they should be pretty comparable. I know iPhone video blows Android out of the water.
Fantastic, yeah.
Blows it out of the water. It's not a competition. The iPhone seems to have, just for some reason, consistently the best video you can get in a phone. Compared to, have you tried, and this is a feature I've wanted to try, I don't have it on the Pixel 3, the astrophotography.
I have not, no.
Oh, well, it's probably cloudy out right now considering it's been snowing all day. We'll have to give that a try a different time. So with the Pixel devices, the newest ones, and they suggest a tripod because it takes like a minute or whatever, but you can take it out, you can set it up with a tripod on a clear sky and click, and it'll get you like a perfect image of the sky, like stars and everything.
That's amazing.
So that is something I've really wanted to try with the newer Pixel devices. And I think Apple, kind of had something to compete with it. It wasn't astrophotography, but I think there was a longer exposure mode that they have for their night photography, for like city type nighttime photography, to get those really cool like downtown images where you want lights reflecting in puddles, things like that. I think they added something, but not quite to the same level as the astrophotography. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we've kind of gone over everything. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about kind of the iterative improvements on a phone, and I also said, you know, I like to talk about kind of the evolution of where I see the phone in the future.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll just briefly talk about that.
Yes.
Because, you know, I think it might be kind of interesting. So I'll make it a little bit more general and just talk about personal computing. So in kind of the history of personal computing. And so at the very beginning, we had the home PC, right? And then laptops came out, which made the PC more or less portable. And, you know, when they first came out, they were very clunky and large. But, you know, over time, we've seen them go down and smaller. But, you know, even around the same time as these laptops, we had, you know, handheld stylus type devices.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, the PDAs, stuff like that.
Yeah, and, you know, those were even before, you know, cell phones. And then we see the transition to cell phone. And nowadays with cell phones, you have people that's their only piece of technology they use to connect to the internet. You know, they don't have laptops, you know, or even computers. You know, everything's going through the cell phone, and kind of we've kind of seen, you know, desktop, you know, it sits on your desk. Laptop, you can put in your backpack, you can take it with you. Cell phone, it fits in your pocket. It's with you almost wherever you go nowadays. And then we've even gone smaller since then. You know, we've had watches, which again, it's on you even more. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like physically tied to your wrist. You know, it's not something you take out of your pocket and sit down or like you place on a table. You know, it's on your wrist. And there's things like Google Glasses that have come out. And so I think that maybe the next iteration on a phone, it's going to be something that's going to be like on us all the time.
Yeah,
it might be
already. It's very close to that.
It's very close. I think that's kind of the evolution of the phone. You know, I'm not saying it's gonna be like implanted as a next step, but
my 5G shot's scheduled for Friday. I don't know what you're talking about.
Bill Gates shot, yeah. But I think, you know, the cell phone, it's gonna be around for a while, but I think the thing beyond that, it's going to be even closer tied to us physically. And I think it's going to, you know, once that happens, everything about it, the user interface, everything like that is going to have to be redefined. Yeah. You know, because what works for a desktop does not work for a cell phone. It's completely different user experience.
I think there's a lot of people, and I think even for the last 5, 6, 7 years have been looking at this. I mean, really, when it comes to smartwatches, that was the first example of wanting to reduce phone pocket computing and bring it into just being a more integrated part of your life. Obviously, it doesn't replace what our smartphones are, but I think it's that first step of people want that. Google Glass back in 2013. 14-ish. I can't remember. I think 2013 was like the campaign. They actually came out in 14. But that was another example of, it was way ahead of its time. It was way too weird for its time. But that was just another example of something integrated more than your phone. And so that's actually an example of, it's been happening for at least 7, 8 years that people have been trying to figure out how to do that, how to replace the phone, the smartphone, with something that's just integrated, that you don't have to pull out of your pocket.
Yeah, and I think like maybe the PDA would be a good example of kind of the state that we're in right now with these devices. You know, as a predecessor to a cell phone, you know, we're kind of trying all these new things, and eventually there's going to be a superior product out there that is going to take over.
Did you ever watch Futurama?
No.
Oh man, there's an episode where obviously because it's 1,000 years in the future. And they joke around. But this was like, I think the episode probably came out in like 2010, 2009-ish, early iPhone days. And they were picking on that by having the iPhone come out. And it was just something you went in and they just like lasered it into your eyeball. And it was just one of these like joke around things where they have, you know, a mile long line outside the store. And that's where actually the Fry take all my money meme comes from and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a joke, but at some point, and like Craig said, we're not necessarily saying it's going to be integrated within your body, but it's going to get pretty darn close. And who knows in 50, 100 years where we're going to be. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird to think about, but it's also weird to think about when we were like 5 years old, 10 years old, the tech we had then compared to what we have now. There's no way. I'm sitting there like, how old was I when the PlayStation 2 came out? I was 11 years old. I got a PlayStation 2 for Christmas, I think, when I turned 12 that year. Or maybe it was when I turned 11 or 12. My birthday is really close to Christmas. So it was sometime in that period, but that was amazing to me. And I just remember, wow, this looks so real. And now you look at like PS2 graphics today and compare them to the most current thing. I would have never thought this is where we would be at as a 12-year-old. That just seemed like the pinnacle of technology to me. And it's nothing now. I mean, you can emulate a PS2 with a freaking not quite a Raspberry Pi yet, but pretty darn close. Mm-hmm. So, and that just shows how fast tech accelerates, and who knows where we're going to be in 20 years. Maybe we will have a phone implant or something.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years we were still using those Nokia flip phones.
Yeah, or the brick phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, well, I think this is going to wrap this one up here, guys. If you stuck around this long, thanks for sticking around. Go down in the comments. Discuss, like, what phone do you use today? What has your journey been like? Anything like that. And also, if you could have one app be way better, or one app you just can't live without, what is it and why? But yeah, we're going to leave it at that, guys. So, Craig, I don't know if you want to just hit up your socials one more time.
Yeah, so it's Felto Craig, FeltoCraig, on all socials.
Also, guys, he has a couple websites. Him and a buddy have worked on apps and stuff too. I'll probably try to leave some of that in the description as well. I don't know if you want to it's a little late, but if you want to go with it, one of them is Pigeon Card. I don't know how much you're still working on that.
Yeah, send a postcard anywhere in the world for $2 with Pigeon Card. And there's also Group Party Games, which is a quarantine party drinking game that we created.
Yeah, so I'll put links to both of those in the description. Definitely check them out. And that'll do it for this one, guys. Thanks for stopping in. See ya.
Cheers.
Cheers.